Okay, we're continuing in the book of quotes here, Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes by me, Pete Rogers, and we're going to go now, we're in alphabetical order, we're going to go to Fyodor Dostoevsky. I did have a couple intervening persons in my own personal notes, like I had some funny quotes of Diogenes, the Greek cynic, he's funny. I had a few other quotes of some writers like, E.L. Doctorow, but they really don't have much, and a lot of it, I'm trying to give stuff that'll be useful to everybody. Those are just little quirks about stuff for writers that I like. All right, but now we're going to talk about one of the greatest writers of all time, Fyodor Dostoevsky. He's the Russian. He lived from 1821 to 1881, and I am a big fan of Fyodor Dostoevsky because I think he hit on the key issue. Whether or not mankind is going to survive and be civilized is going to come down to Christianity. He felt that the only thing that could save Russia from turning into a crap hole was sort of a restoration of a deep faith in God and Christianity, okay? And that's what it comes down to, because most people, they don't really understand this. You have to study some history. You have to know a little bit about religion. Basically, why is almost everything in the United States nowadays a joke? And it's because the United States is no longer as Christian as it used to be. Once you move away from a moral Christian foundation, everything just becomes based on money. So that's why, the conventional medicine gives patients all these drugs that don't work. They know they don't work. They give children amphetamines that don't work. It's just awful, dishonest brutality. And the public schools are a joke. They destroy anything good. The Boy Scouts was good, so they destroyed them, okay? That's what happens when you run a place based on atheistic Darwinism. And the reason why the really rich people in the world want atheistic Darwinism, they insist on it, is because it makes them the equivalent of God. They can enforce slavery on there. They can have polygamy. They can do whatever they want. That's why they want it. They think all the regular proles are a bunch of vermin who pollute the earth. Okay, so why do I love Dostoevsky so much? Well, one of the reasons is this book, Brothers Karamazov. And the best translation is the one by Constance Garnett. And it's the most religious translation, and that's why it's the best. Because there's all these scumbags. If you go to Amazon.com and the book reviews will say, oh, this translation is more accurate, it's not so religious. No, the whole point of the book is to be intensely religious, with the idea that the only thing that could save the world is Christianity. And that's a true statement. I say that you don't have to be a Christian, but you do have to have Christian ethics to make the world work. Christianity accepts everybody. There's lots of religions and cultures. They don't want anybody who's not part of their culture, okay? Christianity welcomes everybody in, and it says be nice to everybody. It says everybody's equal in the eyes of God, and you want to have that as an appeal outside of some tyrannical ruler, okay? So I'm going to talk a little bit about Dostoevsky. I was real into him. Like I said, I bought like 5 different translations of it. I've seen the movie in 3 different languages. I listened to the audiobook. I read the book. I read, commentaries on it. I've watched and purchased commentaries on it. So anyways, Fyodor Dostoevsky. It takes something more than intelligence to act intelligently. Experience, wisdom, guidance. Dostoevsky himself had a very rough life. I'm going to give a little background about Dostoevsky today. This will be part 1. It's going to require several parts to talk about him. If you want to see something that I thought was really good, I made a debate between Dostoevsky and Nietzsche. Okay, I think I called it Debate Between Dostoevsky and Nietzsche, something like that. And it really argues about the fate of the world. Nietzsche, was very anti-Christian, but what I really think between the lines is Nietzsche was a homosexual, and he felt that Christianity was not pro-homosexual enough, and he was really a strange, crazy guy, okay? Nietzsche's, he's funny, he's clever, he's entertaining, but when you get right down to who was his hero, his hero were sort of like brutal people. He liked Napoleon was like a hero to him, okay? Bismarck is a hero to him. Just sort of a brutal. His favorite of the Greek gods was Dionysus, just brutal, okay? So Nietzsche is very overrated in terms of his usefulness for doing anything good for the world or society, okay? I think he's sort of a strange, homosexual, crazy guy, okay? But is he clever and entertaining? Yeah, sure he is, okay? Now, Dostoevsky's a much more reasonable person. Dostoevsky, he lost his father to serfs when he was only 15 years old, and his father was a bit of a brutal man, sort of like the father in the book Brothers Karamazov, okay? And Dostoevsky kind of got in with the wrong crowd as far as the Tsar was concerned. The Tsar kind of means like Caesar in Russian. And he got himself in big trouble with the Tsar. He was sentenced to be executed at the last minute. They gave him a reprieve, but he knew what it was like to be, walking out in line to be on the firing squad. And so he had a very strong sense of that. And he includes that in several of his novels, like in The Idiot, and there's allusions to that in Brothers Karamazov. He was known to be a genius writer even when he was in his 20s. He was absolutely brilliant. His mother also died when he was 17, so he lost both his parents when he was a teenager. Okay, and then when he's in his 20s, he's sent off to prison camp. He basically wasted about 10 years of his life between being in prison camp and being forced to serve in the Russian military and sort of like a penal battalion that he didn't really enjoy. When he was in prison, the only book he had to read was the Bible. Okay, he had a lot of time to think in there. And later on, even once he got out of prison, he had a rough life. His son died apparently of epilepsy when he was only 3 years old, and his name was Alyosha. And Alyosha is the lead character in Brothers Karamazov. And when you look at Alyosha is one of my favorite characters in literature because there's 4 brothers, and Alyosha is the only one who figured out how to live in a good way. And so, the brother who's sort of the most interesting at first is Ivan. Ivan is a genius. Ivan is the one who comes up with the chapter, The Grand Inquisitor, which is the best book chapter ever written in any book of all time. If you want to just read one chapter, read The Grand Inquisitor. You could probably get it for free on the internet. Constance Garnett, again, is the best translation. It's the best book chapter ever written. There's good movies of it. Maybe I'll try linking to the movie in the description below. It's magnificent. Okay, it's basically what happens when sort of a usurper, if you will, tries to take over the church and just promote a fake religion to the pros. Other things about Dostoevsky. He had trouble with his gambling habit. He himself had trouble with epilepsy. The other brother was Dmitri, who sort of symbolized, was a lot like the father, sort of a real hot-tempered guy and aggressive and violent, and he fights. And they were both fighting over the same mistress, Grushenka, really beautiful Russian woman. And man, a lot of Russian Slavic women are incredibly beautiful. I'm telling you, my ex-wife was a Slavic woman. So beautiful you can't even believe it. I don't know if it's a mix from mixing them with the regular Slavs, with the Tatars or something, but man, are they beautiful. Smoking hot beautiful. Okay, let's see. Dmitri was the hothead, and he ruined everything in his life by getting into fistfights and being violent and hot-tempered, and he didn't think enough, so he would do stupid stuff. Okay, Smerdyakov kind of ruined his own life because he spent too much time being resentful. You can't change the world. It is what it is. Most of us are kind of half screwed. You just say, here's what I've got that I can do, and I will make the most of that. That's Alyosha. Alyosha went along reconciling. He reconciled with the boy whose father that Dmitri had beaten up in a fist fight in a bar. And Alyosha made everybody get along, okay? Alyosha made all the kids at school get along by just being nice, by just being thoughtful, by giving other people a chance to talk, by being a good Christian. Alyosha had been to the monastery and he had trained with Father Zosima. And the reason I'm talking about all this stuff is you have to realize this is probably, the greatest book of all time, I think, is Christmas Carol. But this is probably second greatest. Les Mis, third. Quo Vadis by Henry Sienkiewicz, the Polish writer, is probably the fourth best book of all time. This is a masterpiece book. One way or the other, you should read it or at least listen to the audiobook version of it. I felt that the movie versions didn't do it justice, but, they're better than nothing. And so in his own mind as well, Alyosha was the spiritual son of Russia, the hope of Russia. Because it's the only hope that things will ever get better. Because, a lot of people think, we'll have a new CAT scan, a new machine, or artificial intelligence is going to help healthcare or medicine. BS, you don't even understand. Our artificial intelligence is going to be owned by the drug company. It's just going to say, give more drugs. It's going to be a big joke. This is obvious to anybody who really knows medicine, okay? Once you say that the patient is just a talking monkey and that they have no God, that their life has no meaning, good luck making things improve for that, okay? It's always going to be about money, okay? Russian Christianity does not come from Rome. It comes more from Constantinople. Russian history, to some extent, they believe they were founded in some part by Vikings, okay? Russia's kind of a rough place, a little bit brutal, very autocratic. Okay, what else can I tell you about Dostoevsky? The French equivalent of Fyodor Dostoevsky would be Victor Hugo, of course. And the French equivalent of the book Brothers Karamazov would be Les Miserables. Okay, they're both masterpieces. But the character development is better in Fyodor Dostoevsky. Fyodor Dostoevsky is a major psychologist. Victor Hugo's Les Mis is beautiful. The idea of redemption. Jean Valjean, after all his problems in youth, comes back and he's this great, noble, good man, okay? And the bishop, Bishop Muriel, forgiving Jean Valjean to give him another chance at life. And he says, I have bought your soul and I have given it to God. And Jean Valjean values that statement. He goes out and does magnificent things. He saves Fantine. It's beautiful. Okay, Les Mis is an all-time classic. The 1985 musical version of it is magnificent. It's like the greatest musical of all time. Ivan in Brothers Karamazov is a little bit almost likened to Goethe's Faust, the idea of a genius person making a deal with the devil. Okay, as he goes into atheism, he starts descending into immorality, and the inevitable conclusion of atheism is, if there is no God, then everything is permitted. If we're just talking monkeys, then you can do whatever you want. There's no obligation to be nice. There's no obligation to be fair, to be reasonable, to be respectful. It's just a free-for-all of talking monkeys. So you don't want that. Nobody in the long run ends up better off with that. Except maybe some multi-millionaire billionaire who can, keep themselves protected from the chaos that generates. Dostoevsky loved Pushkin. Anybody who's really Russian loves Pushkin. Dostoevsky didn't like Turgenev, who he saw as a pessimistic atheist. You'll notice that atheists, they stink as writers, because if you don't believe in God, you don't believe life has any meaning, then you don't put much meaning into your books, and your books suck, okay? Like some people try to compare Tolstoy to Dostoevsky, but there's really no comparison. Tolstoy stinks, okay? When you first read Tolstoy and you're young, you're impressed by it, because you're reading Tolstoy like Anna Karenina, and it seems kind of beautiful. He describes it. You can imagine yourself there in Russia, and it's snowing outside. They're riding in a horse-drawn carriage, and it's rather beautiful as he looks out the window and he massages his calf, and all the stuff. You're like, wow, it's so accurate. It's so perceptive. And like Nabokov said, Tolstoy had a fundamentally accurate sense of describing what he perceived in events, okay? Perception. But Dostoevsky basically is sort of atheistic. Tolstoy is sort of atheistic that life is meaningless. Like he felt that Anna Karenina and Vronsky just had to conform to society, that they could never be happy, and after things didn't work out for them, Anna Karenina jumps in front of a train. That's pessimistic. Ayn Rand hated Tolstoy's guts. She said, reading Tolstoy, she said, is like walking through a backyard full of dog crap, okay? And I agree. I think Tolstoy stinks, and I was very interested in Russian literature in my younger years, okay? But I don't like Tolstoy. I would never read anything again by Tolstoy. If you study Tolstoy's life, you'll hate him. He was a jerk to his family. He was a jerk to his wife. He was a jerk to a lot of people. He was full of crap. Okay, but Dostoevsky's magnificent. Dostoevsky is like trying to find love and goodness within all the chaos and cruelty of the world. He's beautiful. Let's see what else. He had a deep faith in Christianity. And the message out of Brothers Karamazov is sort of the idea of a moral regeneration accomplished through a return to Christian faith. And that what's the big lesson I learned from this book? Not to mention the chaos, disaster, cruelty, and violence of atheism, but it's the foundation of cow, what, moon, what, ism, all right? Dostoevsky saw unbelief as the root of all evil, and it led to the notion that everything was permitted, okay? Alyosha is what you want to get out of Brothers Karamazov, to try to be more like Alyosha, thoughtful, kind, nice. Give people the benefit of the doubt. Let them talk. Give them a chance to say their point of view, even when everything seems against them. Hear from their point of view before you decide against them. Give them a chance. It's a beautiful book. I love it. It's one of my all-time favorite books. I've gone back to it many times, and this is an extra copy of it. But just to let you see, this is my reading of the Grand Inquisitor chapter. I highlighted, underlined it, read it backwards and forward, read it in some other copies. I wanted to understand it, and I felt that I did understand it pretty well. And basically, the conclusion after you study all this stuff is, if you don't go back to Christianity, you're going to be stuck in an endless chaos of lying, violence, thievery. It's all bad. And I can tell you, if you don't have Christianity saying that everybody is worth something and life has meaning, humans are part divine, as well as part beast, but part divine, it's always going to be might is right, and whoever's got the most might is the person with the most money. And what they're going to want, if you look what they want, they put this in writing, many decades ago. They want a return to slavery, a reduction in the population size, and endless number of concubines. Okay, and that's pretty much what the Roman rulers wanted when they had all that power. So, anyways, Hope that's helpful. This is the end of part 1.